It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I am your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. This show is brought to you by Audible.com. You go to audibletrial.com /Opperman Report. You sign up for free, get yourself a free audiobook. Tonight we are pre-recording. This is one of our pre-recorded podcasts that will be available on Spreaker, iHeartRadio. It'll be up on YouTube, on the Opperman Report YouTube channel. And then we'll put it into rotation on, it'll be on Para X, CBS Radio, Saturday night, 7 p.m. It'll be on Firehorse Radio during the week. It'll be on FPRN at 10 a.m. Monday to Friday. Let's see, who else would play it? Late Night in the Midlands on Tuesdays at 4 o'clock. And whoever else wants to pick up the show and as much as we can get it out there, because this is some local community stuff that I really want to support. One thing I want to clarify, too, there's a little bit more confusion going on about the paid member section of the podcast. I just want to get this out of the way. The Friday night show that we do live on the Awake Network and on PSN and Talk Superstation, all that kind of stuff, all that show will always be free. Those archives will always be free. And in addition to those shows, we're also, now that we have this extra funding coming in, we do free shows. I just did a free show last night. We're doing a free show tonight. But then the members section that we have on the Opperman Report website, the members section there is all brand new content. You're not losing any content. You're getting extra content. But if you want that content, then there's a membership fee that you have to join up and sign up for. So that's the deal with that, okay? And I hope we're getting this out there to the world, because we got a lot of questions about this. I hope we can get this thing figured out. But tonight we got a special guest. He's a local a Las Vegas Metro police detective. His name is Bradley-Nickell. And he is the author of Repeat Offender, Sin City's Most Prolific Criminal, and The Cop Who Caught Him. And I guess Bradley's the cop who caught him and not the offender. Hey, Bradley, are you there?
I'm here, Ed. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, thank you so much, man. We kind of hang out in the same true crime, what do you call it, page.
Circles.
Yeah, right, yeah, over there on, Facebook, the same Facebook page.
Yeah, I think we operate in a lot of the same circles, have a lot of friends in common, and probably share a lot of similar interests.
Yeah, that's true. I bet we do know a lot of the same people. So why don't you tell us about your background and your history and stuff?
Well, I'm going to be 46 years old this year. I've been a police officer with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department for a little over 23 years now. I'm married. I've got 4 kids, 2 grandkids, and life is good. Been here in Las Vegas since 1992. It's been a good ride.
Yeah, I bet it must be a fun town to be a cop in, right?
Yeah, I think it is. It's challenging. It has its own set of challenges, like any big city. But I think there's a lot of myth about Las Vegas too that comes along with its reputation.
Yeah, that's so true. I live in Henderson over here, and there's a park within walking distance. I think there's a law that there has to be a park within walking distance, and these rec centers with these Olympic-sized pools. We have so many great facilities here for families. Just great churches too. Just a great town to live in and raise a family.
I think it is. I'm not a big fan of the triple digits in July and August. I grew up in Denver, Colorado. And I probably couldn't do snow anymore, but the triple digits still knock me down in the summertime.
Yeah, and it's like every other year, like most of the time I can handle it, but every now and then, man, when you know it's coming.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's part of the human condition, though. We're probably not fully happy anywhere we are. We could be in Hawaii and find something to gripe about.
I hear you, man. So now, real quick, because I'm reading in your bio about when you were in the Air Force, you were working on super secret SR-71s and U-2 spy planes?
Yeah, it's kind of funny about that. I can remember being a small child at home, and my mom, she subscribed to the Reader's Digest magazine, and there was a story in there. I was probably maybe 8 years old, and I was reading this story about the Blackbird, this SR-71 aircraft spy plane in the Air Force, and I just thought it was the coolest thing. And And lo and behold, I joined the service prior to becoming a policeman, and I ended up working on that same plane that I had read about when I was a child. It was almost like a dream come true. Not something that I ever wanted to happen. I wasn't pursuing that, but it kind of fell into my lap, and it ended up being a really, really excellent job. And, I tried to go into the military to be a security policeman, and it's the largest career field in the Air Force. So I figured, I'll probably get the job that I'm asking for. And once I got to boot camp and everything, and they assigned me my job, they were out of security police jobs that day, of all things. And that was part of my plan, because I wanted to be a policeman ever since I was a little kid. And part of my plan was, go in the military, spend a few years growing up, start a family, get some experience, go to school, and really start to build a resume, start to market myself and make myself a good candidate to become a policeman.
It's funny, though, because, they say that God gives you the desires of your heart, and deep down in your heart, you wanted that, to be on that spy plane, and he got you there.
Pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
And plus, it's great to talk about, too, Hey,
it is. It exposed me to an area of the military that a lot of people never got to see, and a real camaraderie in the group of people that I was with. Looking back on it now as a fully grown adult man, when I was still a kid in the military, I wish I would have taken maybe a little more time to enjoy what I was doing there, rather than just trying to get through it, because all I had my eyes on was the prize of becoming a policeman somewhere. And it ended up being in Las Vegas, but all I wanted to do was become a policeman. So I didn't really slow down enough. I was young, and I didn't enjoy it fully. My experience in the Air Force as I should have.
I guess we can all say that about our youth,
For sure. Yeah. Hindsight's 20/20.
I hear you, brother. Okay, so now repeat offender, Sin City's most prolific criminal, and the cop who caught him. Okay, what's the deal with that?
Well, I never had any aspirations to be a writer. Like I've already explained, I just want to be a cop, and I wanted to be able to involve myself in people's lives, people who are in need, people that need someone to intervene in their life in some way, that whether it be something as small as meeting somebody that needs a boost with a handshake and a smile, or somebody that really needs somebody to be a peacemaker and somebody to defend them. That's something that's always been of interest to me. So, I've been in this profession a long time, and it's something that has given me the opportunity more than probably any other job I can think of to be able to do that. But it was in 2006 when this investigation broke open. I've been a detective since 1999 with Metro, and we've never seen anything like this before. The unit that I work in, we specialize in covert surveillance, whether that be physical surveillance or electronic. We have a lot of different methods that we use, but we focus our resources on repeat criminals, the people in our community who are committing more crimes than the rest of the criminals. There have been studies done by major universities, the Department of Justice, sociologists, a lot of studies done for a lot of years that indicate that about 80% of all crime is being committed by 20% of the criminals. So it's natural to think that if law enforcement focuses their resources and efforts towards that 20% that's committing the most number of crimes, that has a direct impact on the community. Well, that's what our unit does. We try to focus on those people. And the easiest way to identify who those guys are is generally it's the people that are getting caught the most. If they're getting caught the most, then probably they're doing more crime than the rest of the people. So we look at criminal histories, and in the state of Nevada we have habitual criminal laws. And once we identify these criminals that have these long rap sheets that have been in and out of prison most of their adult lives, we aim to catch them committing new crimes. Sometimes even we'll catch them in progress, breaking into homes, stealing cars, robbing stores, taking purses, victimizing our tourist industry on the Strip. There's a lot of different types of tourist crimes that go on. And we look for those people and we try to catch them. And when we do, and if we've got a good, solid, provable case on someone that has an atrocious criminal history, We partner with the district attorney's office here in Clark County to see that they're treated as habitual criminals and receive the maximum sentence we can get.
Gotcha. So basically, you see a guy who's getting arrested all the time, so you kind of put him under surveillance, and you try and catch him in the act.
Yeah, we do. And it happens, when we're able to, the hardest part is actually locating them, because these aren't people that have a 9-to-5 job. These aren't people that live in one place for any length of time. So it's difficult to locate them sometimes. They're going from place to place or even living on the streets, not as your typical stereotypical homeless person who may be down on their luck or mentally ill or addicted to drugs or alcohol. Some of these criminals are very hardcore criminals. They're doing crime because they love crime, not because they have some habit to support. But the hardest part can be locating them. Once we do locate them, we like to get in their back pocket and stay with them and develop, identify patterns of behavior, places where we can find them again if we need to let them go, and hopefully at some point catch them committing new crimes if they're continuing to involve themselves in crime. The best possible solution is they stop committing crime and we don't have to deal with them anymore. Unfortunately, that's not the trend.
Yeah, wouldn't that be great, though, you know?
Yeah, it would. It really would. It has happened, and I've been able to see some of that over the years of doing this, where I've seen some people turn their lives around and give up crime and become successful, productive members of our community. But that's not the normal.
So this guy, Damon Monroe, he's the one, right?
He was the poster child. When I first started investigating him in 2006, he was already a 19-time convicted felon. I mean, you hear that, and that probably shocks you, but it's true. And it's actually not that uncommon for us to come across people who are not incarcerated, who have double-digit felony convictions on their record. That's probably would take up a whole other show to try and discuss the failures of the justice system and some of the things that cause that type of thing to happen.
That is interesting, though. You'll have a guy with like you said, 19 convictions. And he gets in and out. And you have another guy gets one conviction. They give him 20 years.
Yeah, I think obviously everything's case by case, and it depends on the totality of the circumstances that are presented. I myself personally, I look at somebody who's been in and out of prison 3 or 4 times and has double-digit numbers of convictions on their record. I see that person as more of a threat to our community than the guy that has been convicted of one violent crime and goes to prison for 20, 25 years. Because, I mean, although murder is a heinous crime and it's something that our system must deal with harshly, the majority, I think, of people who commit murder, it's a crime of passion, and those people probably are never going to commit murder again. It was something that happened just because all the stars aligned at the wrong point in time.
Yeah, especially when you're 20 years older, you calm down a bit, and you're...
Right. So what does more harm to a community? Somebody that goes out and commits crimes every single day when they're not in custody, or the one person that snaps and commits a violent crime? People use the words violent crime as a kind of a catchphrase anymore, and you'll hear it even in the courtrooms where defense attorneys are making arguments about how their clients should be treated so leniently because it wasn't a violent crime. But we want to forget about all the history that these people have been involved with and how long they've been doing it. I mean, in this investigation on Mr. Monroe, there were people that lost their businesses because he cleaned them out, and people that their lives were forever changed. I don't think those people deserve any less respect as crime victims than other people.
Yeah, you know what? That's really true. When I had my beeper company in New York, we had some employees stealing from us, and it was devastating. It's devastating emotionally. I had my house broken into, too, by a housekeeper to rob my house. And the violation alone is psychologically devastating.
Sure.
Yeah, and financially and the whole thing, yeah.
And when you look at the totality of the circumstances, like I said, if you've got somebody who's never been a criminal in their life, they've never had any inklings to go out and commit crimes in our community, but then the circumstances arise where they've committed some violent act against another person and they have to be held accountable, that's one set of circumstances. But now look at another person who has been in and out of prison all of their adult life, and they have no intention of ever reforming themselves. They want to continue doing what they're doing. And when they're already planning on doing stuff again when they get out of prison next time, which one of those two people is the greater threat to the community?
Oh, yeah, and some of these guys, they get out of jail, they're going to rob a car. As soon as they walk out the door, they're looking for a car to steal,
Absolutely. I mean, there's been times where we've followed people out of jail.
Yeah.
And I think we had one a few years ago, 31 minutes.
Yeah.
31 minutes out of jail, and he was breaking into cars.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so with this guy, Damon Monroe, he was a career criminal, right?
Right, he was. And his name came across my desk, and he had been arrested with one of his partners for a late-night break-in at a local collectible store, a store that sold Chinese collectibles, stuff that was imported from the Orient. And when they were arrested, the information came across my desk. We have some systems in place that make that happen. And I started looking at this, and it was very interesting that this man had this kind of history and that he was still committing burglaries. Well, he got out of jail rather quickly because he bailed out. His girlfriend, who was a substitute school teacher in the Clark County School District, she bailed him out that next morning. He was only in for a few hours. But his partner, Brian Ferguson, he remained incarcerated in the Clark County Detention Center because he was on probation for a burglary conviction that he was having.
Okay.
And I discovered that they were communicating on the phone. Mr. Ferguson was calling Mr. Monroe from the recorded jail lines at Clark County Detention Center. And those calls can be monitored. And so I did. I listened to those calls, and it started to reveal a very elaborate scheme, and a lot of information came through those phone calls that indicated that these guys were very prolific burglars, and it was going to be a rather large investigation. They were talking about.
Well, let me interrupt you, because now when you're listening to those calls, are you listening in real time, or you get recordings at the end of the night?
No, they're recordings. I mean, the technology is there to be able to listen live if you want,
right.
But there had already been a couple of days had passed, so there were several phone calls and a lot of other work that had stacked up, so I wasn't able to listen to the calls live. It's more convenient to be able to listen to them, at my leisure when I can fit it into my work schedule.
Yeah, nowadays you can probably download the voicemail to your phone and just listen when you're driving around. It's in the world of technology you have now.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting technologies out there. Basically, what I would do is I would wait a few days and then burn all the calls onto a disk. And so I'd work on them at work. I'd bring them home with me, work on them at home. There were times when when one of my kids was traveling for a sports tournament or something, I'd travel with them, and I'd be sitting in the motel room listening to these jail phone calls and taking notes while my kid's out on a baseball field.
Yeah, okay.
So it was very time intensive. There were hundreds of phone calls over the period of a couple months.
Now, weren't these guys worried because they know they're being recorded?
Well, that's the funny thing. They do know they're being recorded. There's an announcement on every phone call where a recorded voice comes on and warns them of that, and it's a legal procedure kind of thing. But I guess they get complacent just like anybody else, where they know somebody can be listening, but they maybe think that nobody will listen. But there were even a couple times on the recorded phone calls where they suspected people might be listening, and they talked about it. Hey, do you think anybody's listening? Yeah, they're probably listening to us, so we got to be careful.
Right.
But then they 2 minutes later go right back to talking about the crime operations.
Yeah, they can't control themselves.
You're right. It is. It's an uncontrollable thing, I think. Very narcissistic. Mr. Monroe was probably the most narcissistic human being I've ever come into contact with. This is the smartest guy in every room he's ever been in.
In reality, or he just thought he was?
He thought he was. He's narcissistic.
Gotcha.
He thinks he can convince anybody of anything, and he thinks he can out-trick anybody. And it became a battle of wills. It became a psychological battle during the investigation where at one point he ended up finding out that I was looking into his activities, and that was a game changer at that point, where he became very paranoid, and the tactics that we had to use needed to change as well so that we wouldn't be detected.
Okay, so then what happened with this guy?
Well, after a couple of months of doing this jail phone call work and stuff, I was able to get enough information to present to a judge and get search warrants for Mr. Monroe's home and Mr. Ferguson's apartment. And we also discovered that they were using storage units around Las Vegas to store a lot of the stolen goods that they had come into contact with. And we ended up recovering somewhere in the millions of dollars. It's been estimated possibly $6 million in stolen goods were recovered from the house and from these storage units. Just some of the craziest stuff. There's a fine furniture store here in town named Milton Homer. They had a $100,000 burglary one weekend where Mr. Monroe and Mr. Ferguson had broken in and taken all this high-end stuff. This isn't like Walker Furniture. This is a high-end furnishing store that is kind of like Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And these guys took about $100,000 in stuff from there. They cleaned out art galleries, the entire collections. There's some auction houses here in town that auction off really high collectible, rare items. They broke into auction houses. There was an authentic Abraham Lincoln letter that they had stolen. Sports memorabilia out the wazoo. I mean, incredible. All the names in all the top sports: Mickey Mantle, Babe Ruth, Pete Rose, Joe Namath, Elway, Rice, Manning, Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, Mike Tyson, boxing gloves, baseball bats, everything authenticated, signatures, rock and roll memorabilia from the Beatles, Rolling Stones, Aerosmith, Jimi Hendrix, Bob Dylan. There was I think it was a gold record from the Doors and Jim Morrison. Wow. And attached to that, in a frame, was a letter handwritten by Jim Morrison with some of his doodles and stuff on there. Just all this really crazy stuff. Hollywood memorabilia from De Niro, Pacino, Arnold Schwarzenegger, many, many more. We ended up recovering, just at the day that we served the search warrants, we identified a couple hundred pieces of stolen property in one day, and we ended up pretty much taking anything that we thought was probably stolen property with us and impounding that and doing follow-up on it later. But we had about somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,700 to 1,800 items that we had impounded that one day. It took about 20 hours and 3 squads of detectives to do it.
Now, was this guy living the high life? Was he living like a millionaire?
He was. There wasn't anything he couldn't steal, or so he thought. But much later, the school teacher girlfriend, she ended up confessing and turning state's evidence, and she turned to me for assistance in doing that. And when she flipped, I interviewed her, and she said the only things that they ever bought was like dairy products and a little bit of vegetables and produce and stuff like that. She said everything in the house was stolen. He never worked. He never had a real job. She made a very meager salary as a part-time substitute teacher. And when you walk into their house, it was like walking into Aladdin's cave. Every wall, every inch of space in that home was filled with some extravagant, rare piece of property from some foreign country or from the bottom of the ocean from a shipwreck. They had a large artifact from the Titanic wreck. The list goes on and on and on and on of all the stuff that they had. Rare collectible coins, rare stamps, rare paper money. He had a room in his house that he had converted into a sound studio, a professional sound studio. There was probably $100,000 of sound equipment in this room. Stuff that some of your professional sound people would walk in there and be like, wow, I wish I had that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking right now. I'd love to have that.
Yeah, it was some of the greatest stuff. Stuff that I don't even know the names or brands, but I know there were some microphones that he had that were like a $15,000 microphone. I didn't even know such a thing even existed.
Yeah, I've seen them, yeah.
Yeah.
No, mine is a couple $100, the one I'm on right now. Now, what about what part of town do you live in?
He lived up off of like Charleston and Cimarron area.
Really?
So pretty decent area.
Yeah. And what would they do? Like they'd rent a truck and then they could get past the alarms and stuff?
Well, they had one guy in the group that he had a 27-foot moving truck that he owned. Okay. And he would let these guys borrow it from time to time when they were doing their bigger jobs. But a lot of times they just go out in the family minivan and go out and find places. And these were professional burglars. They knew what they were doing. They did internet research on burglar alarm schematics, and there's a alarm company here in town that used to be really, really high tech and kind of stood alone, called Sonatrol. A lot of the modern burglar alarm companies use the same technologies now, but Sonatrol was just standalone back then, where they had a security system that they would put into businesses where if the alarm was tripped, sensitive microphones would be activated in the business, and they could actually, the people monitoring the alarm system from the Sonatrol office would be able to hear conversations. They could hear people, they could hear you cough if you were in there, they could hear you speaking, and they could actually tell what area of the business you were in, so that when the police or the security guard arrived, there would be some communication there with a little bit of intelligence attached to it or something. But these guys would go around town and they would figure out where the Sonatrol alarm businesses were, and they would set those alarms off on purpose,
Right.
just to try and tick people off, and sometimes to make it so that people stop coming. If a business owner keeps getting called for 3 weeks at 2 a.m. that his alarm's going off again, and he showed up 14 times, and there's no break-in, there's nothing going on, it's just somebody kicked his door or whatever. It's like the boy who cried wolf. They're going to stop coming, or at least they're going to slow down.
But now, wouldn't the response alarm people, wouldn't they know that pattern and say, hey, someone's about to hit you, because we're getting these false alarms every day?
Yeah, sometimes, but they may not know what the cause of the false alarm is.
Mm-hmm.
It may have been caused by the wind. It may be caused by a faulty alarm. Who knows how many times they've sent a tech out there and replaced the alarm sensors. There's a lot of different variables that come into play there. One of the things these burglars would also do is they would set off the alarms, and then they'd go across the street and hide and just wait to see how long it takes for someone to show up, so they can start to see what kind of a window they've got to be able to get in and out real quick.
Now, how do you know they were doing that?
Well, a lot of that information came from the confession from the girlfriend, because she knew how they operated. She knew an awful lot about what they did, and when she confessed, I was pretty thorough in my examination of her, and she was very open and honest and forthright about everything that she knew.
Yeah, that's so typical,
Well, and the thing was, she was a young gal, and she had been with Mr. Monroe since she was 14 years old. And that comes with its own set of problems. That comes with its own set of psychological issues. It was somewhat of an unhealthy relationship. I don't think there was a ton of physical abuse, but the mental side was extremely paralyzing for her. But at the same time, it was more scary for her. The unknown was more scary to her than actually staying in that abusive type of relationship.
Yeah, I've dealt in a lot of defense cases, and these career criminals, man, they're under constant stress and pressure. They're just waiting. They're waiting to get caught, looking over their shoulder all the time.
Oh, and they're very manipulative, and like I said, he was very narcissistic, very manipulative. I think he's actually highly intelligent. I wish he would have applied his smarts and his energies towards something of an honest trade. But he didn't, and that's the choice that he made. He used to brag on the phones and stuff about how he's never used a drug or never drank alcohol in his life.
Really?
And he says that he likes it that way because it keeps him sharp, makes him a better criminal.
Amazing. Did they have kids?
They did have children. They had, biologically, the two had a son and a daughter, and then there was a stepdaughter that was hers also, and that's where the story took a right turn. After Mr. Monroe was put into jail, and the mom and the children were pretty certain that he was going to spend an awful lot of time in prison, the younger daughter and the older daughter, they both ended up speaking with school officials about some of the abuse that Mr. Monroe had been doing to them. I'm not going to go into that real deep here, and I don't go into it very deeply into the book, because this isn't an expose on the harm that was done to these girls. But in a nutshell, he ended up being charged with several counts of sexual assault with a deadly weapon and child abuse against the girls.
Really? So this guy was like a sick criminal monster in every possible area of his life.
Yeah, it became evident that there was no crime that he was not willing to commit. With him abusing his daughters, there is no uglier crime than that.
Yeah. Well, but he has a conviction for that now, right?
Well, he's not convicted yet, so he is innocent until proven guilty. But his daughters have testified at a preliminary hearing already. That was actually a number of years ago. And that is the only case that still remains on him unresolved in the system. He's been through a long series of competency hearings through the state mental facility up at Lakes Crossing in northern Nevada, where the state doctors have determined that he is competent to stand trial. But his attorneys are convinced that he's not, so they keep that struggle going. Hopefully the case where the daughters are victims, hopefully that'll be resolved soon.
Who are his attorneys?
At this time, I think he has Jennifer Schwartz through the public defender's office, I think, is his lead attorney.
Okay, we're going to take a little break now, but we're a commercial break, but we're here with Bradley-Nickell. Fascinating story. The author of Repeat Offender, Sin City's Most Prolific Criminal, and the Cop Who Caught Him. Now, that book is available. I'm going to have a link on the Opperman Report blog to the Amazon link, but you can also get over at Wild Blue Press, and we got a whole bunch of Wild Blue Press authors here. So you can go to Wild Blue Press, and you can buy it directly from over there as well. So we'll be right back here with more of Bradley-Nickell and his book, Repeat Offender, Sin City's Most Prolific Criminal, and the Cop Who Caught Him, right after these messages. We'll be right back in about 3 or 4 minutes. And now a word from our sponsors. We are listener-sponsored, and we appreciate your donations. If you like the show, please visit OppermanReport.com and click on the donate button, or you can donate directly through PayPal at OppermanReport@gmail.com. We have Mike Ray of InfinityHomePlans.com. He's the host of Parlay over at CJ Mars Radio, Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you need custom home designs, stock plans, or 3D work, he's your one-stop shop for home design and drafting needs. Mike Ray at InfinityHomePlans.com. At InfinityHomePlans.com. If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils independent distributor. Now, these are 100% therapeutic grade oils. They help support the body's natural functions. You can visit her website posted on Essentially Tammy to see the current deals, or email at JocoTammy, JoCaTami or call 352-239-8546. 352-239-8546. Hey, if you need a private investigator, go to my website, emailrevealer.com. We offer asset searches, locates, skip tracing, adoption investigations, online infidelity investigations. We can recover deleted text messages from a cell phone or trace an email to online dating websites to catch people cheating. That's emailrevealer.com, or you can call 800-572-9762. 800-572-9762 for emailrevealer.com, my PI website. Pacific West Bamboo. It's your premier source for construction and craft-grade bamboo poles. They're announcing their latest project with EcoHead Event Sanitation, making bamboo composting bathrooms and porta-potties. Their first display will be at the Lucidity Festival in Santa Ynez, California, April 11th to the 13th. Come by and say hi and see what you can build with bamboo. Contact them for any kind of event planning, display building. If you need construction grade or craft grade bamboo products, call Amanda at 503-839-8126, 503-839-8126, or visit PacificWestBamboo.com, their brand new website. We're also sponsored by the New World Mexican Women. This is a rural Mexican craft women's cooperative They are traditional makers of fine handcrafted, authentic jewelry. They use beautiful stone mosaics and Pacific blue Abilene inlay. They have a wonderful book of love letters written to their men in the United States, begging them to return to their families in Mexico. But they've written a new book, and it's it's about a young girl that falls in love with a rodeo bull rider and runs off with him without telling her family. It's a beautiful love story called Azuquena Part 1, Azuquena to the Rodeo. You can find their books and jewelry by clicking on their banner ad at OppermanReport.com or by Googling New World Mexican Women. You can also promote your business or website right here and have your ad played all over the world 7 days a week by emailing OppermanReport@gmail.com or calling 800-572-9762. Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Don't forget the shows are brought to you by Audible.com. Go to audibletrial.com/Opperman Report. Get yourself a free audiobook. So, we're here with Bradley-Nickell. He's the author of Repeat Offender, Sin City's Most Prolific Criminal, and the Cop Who Caught Him. So now, I got another question for you about these kids. Now, they were all daughters?
Well, they had 2 daughters and a son, but it was the 2 daughters that had been abused.
And how old were the daughters?
Just off the top of my head, I think they were 10 and 8 or 10 and 7 at the time, something like that.
Okay, so no, did you get any kind of wind of that when you were listening on the phone calls?
None of it. In fact, the only thing that pointed us in that direction at all, even slightly, was when we served the search warrant at Mr. Monroe's home. We found a stun gun in a drawer in the kitchen, and we impounded that, of course, because convicted felons are prohibited from possessing stun guns in the state of Nevada. So we took that with us too, and then so it was a few months later when the abuse stuff started coming out, and during an interview of the mother, she had said that Mr. Monroe had used the stun gun on the girls in the past to punish them for bad behavior. And when she mentioned the stun gun, my first thought was right back to that stun gun that we pulled out of the drawer and had impounded. And little did I know that was going to be a part of something that blew up and took that right turn that I told you about.
Okay, so that's amazing. That really is. But now, she stood by and watched and let him do that. How was that? She was just totally,
she didn't know about any of the sex abuse, but she knew about the stun gun stuff. And if I recall, I remember what she told me. She let him rationalize it and minimize it. You know, he told her, "Well, the battery's not very strong. It doesn't hurt very bad. Look, I'll do it to myself." And she said that he actually put the stun gun on his arm and shocked himself with it to demonstrate that it wasn't so painful. But she also, when she explained that to me, she said I should have left right then, but I didn't. And like I said, there's a pretty heavy duty psychological set of circumstances there in women who live in abusive relationships that it's not so easy for some of them to just pick up and leave, especially a woman that has never known anything else since she was 14 years old other than the power and control and domination from this one man.
I can totally understand that because they get in your head, and he got in her head.
Right.
Oh, boy. Okay, how'd you catch this guy?
Well, when we caught him, he was there that day when we served the search warrants. And Mr. Monroe he's kind of a showman. He's always doing something that surprises authorities. He likes to thumb his nose to authorities. There was one day when we did surveillance on him, and he was so spooked at the time because there had been a mention of the repeat offender team in court, and it's the repeat offender program is the name of the unit that I work in, criminals, and the acronym is ROPE. but criminals, when they hear the word rope, they know that some of the most experienced and well-trained detectives at Metro are on their tail. So you've got criminals out there in the community that are very good and competent at counter surveillance. It's not like following a cab driver around and he doesn't ever check his mirrors. There are criminals out there that are just as good at counter surveillance as we are at surveillance. And we have a lot of different things that we can do to make handling those people easier. But, the bottom line is, if somebody is being followed and they want to try and discover whether the police are there, there's things that they can do that are fail-safe every time. So anyway, Mr. Monroe at one point discovered a couple of detectives that were trying to tail him for a little while, and he turned it around and then started following those guys. And he has no problems with thumbing his nose to authority. He ended up going down to the courthouse and putting up some signs all around the courthouse downtown, listing some names of some of the detectives in the unit, and warning felons that these detectives were going to follow them and catch them committing crimes. My name was on the list, plastered up all around the courthouse. Not a big deal, actually kind of funny, especially looking back on it. It's there's some humor in that, but
just a list of names or pictures too.
He didn't have pictures, no, but list of names and stuff like that. He's trying to antagonize authority.
How do you know it was him?
Well, later he admitted to it, but it was only obvious at the time when this was going on that it was him.
Okay, so it's amazing. So how'd you catch him?
Well, we caught him by having all the stolen property found in his home. We actually never caught him in progress doing a crime, as far as like breaking into buildings and stuff like that. But we caught him and arrested him for stolen property, the millions in stolen property, and he didn't get out of jail again after that. And I worked very closely with the Clark County District Attorney's Office, Chief Deputy District Attorney Sandra DiGiacomo, and she did a real bang-up job on prosecuting Mr. Monroe. But that wasn't the end of the story. He's incarcerated in the Clark County Detention Center for a period of many months, awaiting trial and adjudication on his cases. And then the sex abuse charges came forward. And I think there was a psychological break at some point where Mr. Monroe, he'd always been a little bit paranoid. Most criminals are. They're antisocial personality people and stuff like that. But then he really kind of went off the edge and started believing in some conspiracy theories. And he convinced himself to believe that I didn't have a search warrant to search his house back on November 6th of 2006. That I had showed up there and had the SWAT team show up and rip the gate off his front door. And we arrested him and searched his house. And he says we had a garage sale at his home. And we gave stuff away to people that it didn't belong to. And that we had done all this without the authority of a judge signing a search warrant. And he's actually convinced himself to believe that's true. But then when we show him incontrovertible evidence to the contrary, then show him that there is a search warrant and it's got a judge's signature on it. His conspiracy theory morphed into believing that the judge actually conspired with the police department to cover up police misconduct and sign a backdated search warrant to cover our butts. And it's just, no matter what type of proof that you could offer to Mr. Monroe, he's in such a state of mind now that he's going to find a workaround, because I don't think he can psychologically accept his fate. So he's going through all these conspiracy theories and stuff, and then the sex charges come up. Then it wasn't long after that we discovered through a jailhouse snitch that Mr. Monroe was trying to plot to have me and District Attorney DiGiacomo and District Court Judge Michelle Levitt murdered.
Let me ask you this before we get to that part. Now, when you're saying that he was responding with all these crazy theories and stuff like that, he was actually putting forth motions through his lawyers?
Well, his attorneys wouldn't put forward those motions because they knew that they were false. But he was wanting them to put forward these motions, and that's where the competency issues came up, because there was a large conflict between him and his attorney, where he's trying to tell his attorney to behave in a certain way, and his attorneys are telling him that's nonsense, it doesn't make sense, there's no evidence of that. And so then I think he fired 2 or 3 different attorneys because he thought they were working for the police department at that point.
Yeah. So now he starts coming up now with murder plots. He wants to murder you.
Yeah, he actually solicited another inmate who he believed was a connect with the Mexican mafia. He solicited another inmate to have me and Sandy DiGiacomo and District Court Judge Michelle Levitt murdered.
Did he have the money to pull that off?
Well, I don't think he did. I think we did a good job in the investigation of uncovering all the money and all the property that he had, but he was making promises to people in the jail that we hadn't found all of his property and all of his money, and that he was going to make arrangements for that money to be exchanged. And he was convincing, it's convincing enough to get a hardened criminal in jail to believe that he was actually going to be able to carry this out. Now, this hardened criminal that was in jail found that violated his own criminal code of ethics, and he felt that this Mr. Monroe was trying to have public officials killed for no good reason, and he couldn't let it happen, so he actually ended up telling the police about it.
Really? Okay, then you think that was his motive, or you think maybe he just wanted to get out early and he thought he couldn't deal with that?
I think that I truly do think that was his motive.
Really?
Because he didn't get anything out of it. In fact, oftentimes people don't realize this. When inmates or people who are in jeopardy of going to prison for a long period of time and stuff like that, when they actually come forward and are going to testify in a criminal matter against somebody else, oftentimes the district attorney's office, they withdraw from trying to be lenient on that person because they don't want to make it look like that person's testimony in the other matter is bought.
So now, did he pick up new charges for the attempted murder?
Yeah, they actually had the snitch in the jailhouse. He wore a wire and had conversations with Mr. Monroe, where Mr. Monroe was talking about the plot that he wanted to have go down. There were specifics that he was putting in place. He wanted it to be somebody on a motorcycle to show up in our neighborhoods and shoot us through our windows in the morning when we're on our way to work. So at that point, I have to start believing that this could be in play, and I'm driving different routes to and from work every day, and I'm checking my mirrors, and I'm doing tail checks of my own throughout the course of the day when I'm driving around.
So now, you had information that he specifically knew exactly where you lived.
Well, I don't know if he knew where I lived, because several years before this, I had taken steps to make my address private, because I knew that I was dealing with most of the worst criminals that we have in our community. But I know that it was either the district attorney or the judge that he had their address, and he got it from the county website of all places. You can go on there and punch in somebody's name and get more information than I think maybe people should be allowed to get.
Yeah, but like you said, there's steps you can take to kind of confuse things and muck up the works there.
There are absolutely, and I've taken those steps.
Every cop does, yeah, and it's the smart thing. I do it myself. Every cop should, because it is specific reasoning. I'm surprised that these DAs wouldn't know that.
Well, they're pretty high-powered and operating in fast environments. It's probably one of the last things they think about.
Oh, boy. So how many years is this guy? How long is he going to be away?
Well, he ended up getting convicted of all the charges in the property cases. There was a gun that was found in one of the storage units. He was convicted of possessing a firearm by a felon. And then they tried him for 3 counts of soliciting murder, and he was convicted of all that stuff. Cumulatively, he's doing 6 consecutive terms of life without parole now. He's a 51-time convicted felon, and he still has to have the case where his daughters were victims. That still has to be resolved, and I think they're in the process of trying to bring that to a conclusion.
And the wife was never charged with anything?
Actually, she was. She was charged with conspiracy. I think originally she pled guilty to a felony. She'd never been arrested in her entire life. Right. And she testified, I think it was in 3 different criminal trials, fully and completely testified before the grand jury as well. So she was 10 million% cooperative. And, I think the circumstances warranted. My position is, I mean, I didn't make this decision as the district attorney's office that made the offer, but I think she deserved to a second chance. She'd never been in trouble before, and she took responsibility for everything that she knew. Of course, she did that because she was in jeopardy of going to prison and losing her kids and stuff, but who wouldn't?
Yeah.
So she ended up originally pleading guilty to a felony. I think after she completed her period of probation, it was dropped to a gross misdemeanor, and that's where that stands today.
So is she teaching again, or she lost that?
I don't think she's teaching. I haven't talked to her in a while, but last I talked to her, I think, was last summer, and she wasn't ready to try and get back into teaching yet. Things were kind of complicated. She's moved around from state to state a few times, and she's just trying to get life back under her, get her legs out, back under her. She's lived a difficult life, and financially it's been difficult for her. She didn't have to worry about income before.
Right.
Now she actually has to worry about how the bills are going to get paid. But I think she'll always say that she is much happier now living life this way than always looking over her shoulder and wondering when the cops are going to come banging at the door.
Yeah, I could imagine. But the other thing is, too, is once you live like a victim your whole life and you let your kids be victimized, there's predators out there that can sniff that out. They can smell that, man, and they come
there's
right.
No doubt.
Oh, my God, yeah. Yeah, people like that, I'd say, too bad we don't have more support systems for these kind of people,
Yeah,
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm very thankful for throughout this whole experience of this case, it put me in a position where I knew somebody needed to write a book about this story, because even if this came out in the newspaper or the news media talked about this interesting affair, nobody had the volume of information about it that I did. I was the lead investigator throughout the whole thing, and there's no police officer that I've ever met once I tell them this story, or the other cops that were involved in this investigation with me. None of us have ever seen anything like this before. And I saw an opportunity to tell people a story that not only tells them about a notorious criminal that preyed on the citizens of Las Vegas, but there's a lot more to be told in this story too. There's a redemption story here, and that's a big deal to me. To see his girlfriend go through this process of turning to the police and asking for help and providing the assistance that she could, and redeeming herself in a lot of ways. There was one point in time during the investigation where I was still doubting as to whether or not she was really on board with helping bring his operation down or not. And I flat out asked her, I said, what makes you know that you're not going to turn back to him, and you're not going to show up in court and say that the police made you say all these things, or make up some lie or whatever, say that the police were lying about everything? How do we know that that's not going to happen? And her response to me was that she wants to live the rest of her life not even telling a little white lie. And that makes me feel good for people again right there, and I can support that 10 million %. So I want people to be able to read this book and get the takeaway from the book. And the takeaway isn't just crime and justice. I have no interest in putting Mr. Monroe up on display for everybody to mock him and witness his suffering. But there's a redemption story in this story too that I think people are going to find very fulfilling.
Amazing. And was this in the news here in Vegas? I think I kind of remember something about storage lockers and all this stuff like that, but that was about it, though.
Yeah, it was in the news. I think it hit the news that day in November 6, 2006. The Review-Journal had some articles for about a week, and I know that the news cameras were out on the sidewalk while we were doing all the searching of the house and processing of all this huge volume of property. The news media actually helped, they put some stuff on the TV during the news and they were asking the viewers to, if you see anything here that you think belongs to you, get in contact with Metro. And we were able to reunite some victims with some of their property through that process. Now, it's not something where somebody just makes a phone call, shows up down at Metro and says, "Yep, that's mine." Right. There's going to be some standard of proof that they're going to have to provide that is reasonable and convincing that they're telling the truth.
Yeah, I think I remember that. Wasn't there like an open house where people could come down and look at tables and stuff? There was all kinds of stuff laid out where they could look at their stuff.
No, we didn't do that. We actually had a really good group of people led by a civilian in the police department that she worked her tail off, doing a lot of research, trying to discover where all this stuff came from, and she found so much stuff. It took her, I think, 1.5 years to find where the Abraham Lincoln letter came from.
Wow!
But we were able to reunite that piece of property with its owner, and it's worth over like $100,000. But I was very pleased and proud of the outcome of the investigation. And I'm pleased and proud that Mr. Monroe won't be able to victimize anybody anymore. I'm thankful that he wasn't able to carry his plot out. And I'm thankful that this put me in a position where I can reach people with a redemption story. And the other good part is within the last few weeks, I've come up with an opportunity to partner with a local nonprofit organization. I'm not going to name them yet because it's not all official, but the sale of each one of the books, Repeat Offender, a portion of that sale is going to go to a local nonprofit, and they're going to allow me to direct that money towards victims of child sex abuse. So I'm very pleased that that's something I'm going to be able to fulfill. It's been something that's been really eating at me for a long time because of what happened to the girls. And I'm thankful to have the opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah, well, as soon as you have the details on that, let me know, and we'll add it to the blog, in the blog post of where people can go to. And do you have any appearances or anything coming up?
Any appearances? I just did a radio show out of Chicago. I think it was a week ago. There's some other things in the works. Might be getting on the local TV here, and I know that my publisher, Wild Blue Press, is reaching out to some of the local broadcast radio stations and stuff, and trying to see if they're interested in helping us with reach. Yeah,
I noticed you had a little blurb from Ann Bremner.
Yeah, Ann Bremner was kind enough to offer a blurb. She's read the book already, and she offered a sparkling review and blurb for the book. I'm very thankful for that. Aphrodite Jones, she's got her own television show on the Investigation Discovery Network now, True Crime. She's a big name, a New York Times bestseller, and she offered a really good blurb for the book. I was just in contact with her the other day. Sent her a Kindle copy of the final draft, and she's a great gal. Very thankful for her. David Roger here. A lot of people will recognize that name. Dave Roger offered a great review for the book for me, and I'm thankful. I've had a lot of people from well-known, high-profile people all the way down to the soccer mom who loves true crime. I've had a lot of people read the book. Some people call them beta readers. During the course of the writing process, it's good to contact just readers and send them a copy of the manuscript and say, tell me what you think about this. Give me an honest review. And because you can't do that with your friends or your relatives because they're never going to tell you the truth because they're afraid to hurt your feelings. But if your writing is bad and they tell you it's good, that's not good for you. I needed people to be brutally honest with my writing, and about 6 or 7 years of writing and 21 rewrites of the manuscript, it finally got to be good enough where I've got New York Times bestsellers saying, hey, great job, this is great stuff.
Okay, great. And do you have any else in the works, any other books you're thinking about?
I've got some stuff in the back of my mind that I'm not willing to discuss publicly yet. I'm working on my blog. I've got a blog up at bradley-nickell.com that I tell a lot of stories at. One thing that you'll find with my writing, everything I write isn't something that's just meant to entertain people. Everything I write has meaning, and it's something where I want people to take something away from it and maybe use it in their own lives to try and make something a little bit better for themselves. So go to bradley-nickell.com, and you'll see a bunch of little stories, some police stories, some writing stories, some different experiences I've been through in my life where I think it has impact.
Okay, great. Bradley, thank you so much, man. Bradley-Nickell.
Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you very much, man. It's a fascinating story, man. It's Damon, Damon Monroe, right?
That's right, Damon Monroe.
My God, what a nut.
And the book's name is Repeat Offender, and you can find it at wildbluepress.com/repeat offender.
There you go, man. Thank you so much for coming on, and we'll be right back with more after this.